welcome back to another episode of Two Plane Sports. As you guys can see, we've got another guest for today's video, Brandon Drumm. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, how you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about recruiting during this episode. We'll cover pretty much everything. Today that we're recording is the 22nd, but we're airing on Monday morning. So everyone is just awaiting Josiah Wagner's decision later on today. We're going to touch on him and other recruits that we are all hoping to land. But let's go ahead and get started. So, Brandon, we had Jackson Arnold on last Friday's episode, and we kind of chatted with him about, the Sooners got so hot during July after what was a really slow start to recruitment in the summer. Can you kind of tell us from your perspective as an insider, how all of that came to be? Did it seem to be like a planned thing by the staff? Like, let's all just try to get July to be the month where we get all of these guys to commit?
Well, plan is a kind of a generalized term for that. I think it was a plan, but it was more on, look, if you want to come to Oklahoma, you can't take visits. And everybody wanted to get all their visits done, and they wanted to do all this stuff in June. Well, after June got over with, July, the dead period, now everybody can start to make decisions because they're not being hounded. They're not traveling around everywhere. And so for Oklahoma, especially Oklahoma, and I would venture to say Clemson is another, in the June, July, that's had a really big month. And those two programs are kind of synopsis for no visits. If you're going to commit to those two programs, you don't take visits. And so they basically decided, we're going to let you guys go do all the visits, take all the visits you want to do. We feel that Oklahoma is going to be the best place for you. And that was kind of, from talking to sources, that was the kind of the approach that Venables and his staff took, is you're not going to find a better place than this place. So you might as well go ahead and take your visits. You can silent commit here, if you will, and say you're going to come to this school. But if you don't come, we've got other options over here, and we've got other guys. It's a first come, first served basis type deal. So, yeah, I guess plan, yes, but at the same time, they had, they were willing to wait, they're on certain guys, no matter how long it took.
Brandon,
Brum,
go ahead.
No, Brum, you go next.
All right. So, obviously end of June, July has been great for Oklahoma. Obviously, July could end up on a very high note. Someone that's going to be committing, next week is also Derek Leblanc. How do you feel about him and his upcoming decision? I believe that's Thursday.
If I was going to make a pick, I guess I would pick Oklahoma, but I said on our board I wouldn't put a crystal ball in no matter what. I made promises to people, whether it was him committing to Florida, whether he's committing to Oklahoma, because if I did it with my relationship with the family, it's dead giveaway where the kid's going to go. So I've stayed neutral with my picks on that. That being said, yeah, I guess I would pick Oklahoma, but they are going to make a decision on the 28th. I think it's at 1:30 p.m. Florida, he visited Florida like 20 times. So, you got to like Florida's chances, but at the same time, anytime you pay to go across the country 4 or 5 times to visit Oklahoma on your own dime, says something for that, right? And Penn State's kind of just, they're the outlier in this. I don't want to say that they're not in it, but at the same time, it's between Florida and Oklahoma. And right now, I would give the edge to OU.
So kind of just to stick on the defensive line, one that we were kind of excited about, and then we kind of lost interest because it looked like he might be going elsewhere. And then players started tweeting him again, seemingly out of nowhere last week. It's Colton Vasek.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Colton Vasek. Yes, exactly. So where do you think Oklahoma sits in that recruitment?
That one's kind of a, top flip of the coin, right? I look, Texas and Oregon felt really good about where they stood up until just recently. And now it seems like he's visiting Texas Tech at the end of the month. And Oklahoma's made like this big surge. The recruits are pushing him. The coaches are pushing him. They love Colton Vasek at Oklahoma and think very highly of him. So, he wants to make a decision in the first couple of weeks of August. Your guess is as good as mine on that one. But, I think Oklahoma is making quite a push right now. I don't want to get everybody's hopes up and say, oh, it's going to be Oklahoma. But at the same time, from talking to people, I feel pretty confident that Oklahoma is catching up to Oregon and Texas right now. And but Texas Tech, Joey McGuire, one of the best when it comes to recruiting the state of Texas, did it at Baylor, was an all-around coach whenever he was in the high school ranks, and was the president of the coaches, Texas High School Coaches Committee. So he's beloved there. It's going to be very hard to keep Texas Tech out of the running. And the fact that he's visiting Texas Tech at the end, that's why I say it's anybody's game right now for Colton Vasek. He's played his cards really close to the vest. And if Oklahoma pulls that off and then somehow ends up with, Derek LeBlanc, Edric Hill, David Hicks, and I guess Cecilia Akana, that would be probably the best defensive line haul in the last decade at least.
And I just have a quick follow-up. Is there really anything that you think that has changed to make OU surge in this recruitment other than OU's pressing him really hard? Do you think he's second guessing maybe Texas and Oregon, or is it just kind of like I don't know, maybe he's just thinking to himself?
Well, Oklahoma's made, when you get all these top commits starting to throw their name in the hat at Oklahoma and say, oh, I'm going there. And then let's say they get Derek LeBlanc. And let's say at the end of the month, they end up with Josiah Wagner. I don't think Jacoby Johnson, the plan right now, from my understanding, I don't foresee him announcing at the end of July like originally thought. I think it's going to be August, beginning of September, when he announces that he wants it over before the season starts. They have a way they're talking about and making the announcement. So we'll see how that goes. But if you're Colton Vasek and you see all these kids starting to announce to Oklahoma and it gets up near the double digits, it kind of piques your interest a little bit and makes you rethink your strategy, and maybe of what you thought about Oklahoma to begin with may not have been the right call in his mind. And maybe his whole family in the Texas Longhorn dynamic, maybe that is also coming around to where they're going to kind of relinquish that and be like, okay, maybe you can go play at OU, I don't know the inner workings of that recruitment, but I'm just throwing some ideas out there of why that may have changed, especially during a dead period, because that's really hard to do.
Yeah, so you mentioned a guy that in Cecilia Akana that seemed to have come out of nowhere, and when we had Parker on a few weeks back, he mentioned that Venables has typically, it's kind of recognized that Venables usually picks out one or two guys and he just hyper focuses on them, and 9 times out of 10 or most of the time Venables is going to get the guy that he's 100% locking in on. Do you foresee Akana potentially committing when he visits during the party at the Palace at the end of the month, or is that still something that could be a little bit?
I think it's down the road. I think look, I won't be shocked by anything in recruiting. Let me preface that there, but at the same time, I don't know that I could sit there and definitively say, oh yeah, I think maybe he could commit, because he has some visits he wants to do during the fall, Oklahoma being one of them. So being an official visit, obviously he's going to take an unofficial at the end of July. So we'll see. I know Oklahoma feels good about their situation, and they should. And I know a lot of people, he wants to take an official to Texas. His sister's a volleyball player there. That comes into play. But right now, even when you talk to Texas people, they're like, nope, I don't think there's any way possible he ends up at Texas. So, you have to like Oklahoma's chances. Oregon's in on this. Obviously, Alabama, I think, is another program that's in on it. I think USC is recruiting pretty hard. UCLA is trying to get an official visit out of him. But if Oklahoma can really show out during this unofficial visit, he hasn't been to Oklahoma with the new staff. So, and his dad, Brandon Akana, is a high school football coach. The Jocelyn Allo, the Dylan Gabriel, the Jonah Lulu, I can't ever pronounce it right. Whatever. Jonah Lulu. There you go. In my head, I had to get that right. Those are all Hawaii connections, and with him being originally from Hawaii, there's that connection as well. So you got BV pressing really hard. You have Miguel Chavis. You have Jocelyn Allo. You got the 3 Hawaii connections already on the team. Things look to be moving in a really good direction for Oklahoma right now for Akana, but I don't know that I would say to expect a commit at the end of July. That would be surprising to me.
So as Jose alluded to at the top of the show, we had Arnold on our last episode, and he brought up a couple players by name. One of the players he brought up was Malik Vickers. That seems to be, from an outside looking in, an Oklahoma-Alabama battle. I know he has Michigan in the top 3 too, but I haven't seen much in regards to that. So where do you think Oklahoma sits with Malik Vickers?
I think they lead. I do. I think they lead. But I want everybody to understand, leading and getting his signature away from Nick Saban are 2 totally different things. So he has a former teammate that's there at Alabama. I believe Jay Valai is the one that recruited him to Alabama. So there's a really strong relationship there with that. Keon Brown is another player there that my light just died. Keon Brown's another player there that has the same coach, the same person that helps them in the recruiting process. So does Jordan Pride. So there's a list of guys that Jay Valai has put Oklahoma in good standing with early on. And I think Malik Vickers, he's come up when he visited unofficially. He stayed there for like 5 days. His whole spring break, he was in Norman. And then he came up for the unofficial for 3 days, or for the official for 3 days for the Champion Barbecue. And now he's coming back at the end of the month again. And from what I understand, things are looking really good for him in Oklahoma right now.
Kind of a 2-part question. Do you think with Alabama picking up a few 5-star defensive backs commits might be playing a factor in Vickers' decision? And then also it seems like another OU Alabama battle is Jordan Renaud from Tyler, Texas. How is Jordan, is OU in a pretty good spot there, or is it kind of going to be one of those deals where it's going to be really hard to beat Nick Saban down the road?
I would pick Alabama right now if Jordan had made the decision in regards to Renaud. Yeah, his family wants him at Oklahoma, from my understanding. Closer, able to get to the games easier. Tyler to Norman is 4 hours. That's an easy drive down on Saturdays. So you can wake up at 6 a.m. and be there an hour before kickoff and be good to go. So there's that playing into it. So he's going to be there at the end of the month. He's going to take a visit to Oklahoma unofficially. Again, he'll take an official during the season. We'll see where it goes from there with that. But right now, I would pick Alabama as the leader. I don't want to say outright leader, but I do believe that they're leading there. But I think it's going to be the team that gets him last on campus is going to be who wins that battle. So if Oklahoma can get an unofficial after he visits Alabama for the Texas A&M game, I would like Oklahoma's chances in that point. As far as Vickers goes in the Alabama, the defensive back, I think that has a lot to do with it. But at the same time, again, the relationship that Valai has with, the people helping and the family, all of that around Vickers, that's playing a big, big deal in his recruitment. And I think that's playing more into it than, getting a couple of 5-star guys, because Vickers is a guy that can play corner or safety. So I don't really think that pigeonholes him anywhere.
So someone that we talked about with Jackson were his teammates, Peyton and Ryan. And it seems like for a while now, but over the last few days on Twitter, fans are starting to go crazy over the possibility of Bowen flipping his commitment from Notre Dame. But Peyton has been very adamant, at least publicly, that he's going to stick with that commitment. I think I saw a tweet. I can't remember if it was from you or someone else or Parker, but Peyton was expected to plan some visits to other schools. Do you know if he is making those public anytime soon, or if he's even actually still planning visits, or sticking with that commitment to Notre Dame?
He wants to take visits at the end of the month. I don't know that he has it nailed down 100% where he's going. I kind of lean towards Oklahoma on this, just because Yates and Arnold are supposed to be going up there. Now, Yates hasn't. Again, he's just like Bowen, where he hasn't, 100% said, "Yeah, I'm going here." So, I think wherever he ends up at the end of July, has put themselves in a really good position, whether that's A&M or Oklahoma. As far as the Notre Dame commitment goes, look, until he decommits, he's committed to Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame is well aware of everything that he's doing. He's been pretty open to them, but at the same time, they're not stupid. They're gonna keep looking around for other safeties to make sure that they're not, left with their pants down around their ankles either. So this recruitment's been kind of it's a lot more dramatic than I ever thought it would be with Bowen, because I really thought he would get it over with in June, and he didn't. And he pushed it back to the end of July when he wants to get it over with. Now, we could be looking at the end of August. I mean, who knows how this thing's going to play out down the road. But I would be remiss if I didn't say A&M or Oklahoma weren't, within striking distance of flipping him. I think that would be crazy to talk about. I didn't say that. He's visited them so much, it just makes sense.
So at the receiver position for the 23 class, you've got Jaquaize Petaway committed and Keon Brown. Another guy that Jackson Arnold brought up by name was Anthony Evans, as a guy he's pushing for pretty hard at the receiver position. And we asked Parker Thune a couple weeks ago at this point. He felt Oklahoma was in a good spot, but 2 weeks ago feels like an eternity, and this recruiting stuff changes so much. Do you still feel like Oklahoma is sitting in a pretty good spot for Evans?
Yeah, because he's not going to visit anywhere in July. I mean, he's done with his visits before he announces he's going on a cruise with his parents. He told me so. Unless he makes other visits, I like Oklahoma's chances a lot with Anthony Evans.
That's good to hear. That's going to be a pretty good wide receiver haul. And it seemed like, earlier in this recruiting cycle, people were sounding the alarm and everything else with Cale Gundy and recruiting wide receivers. And I think that's a solid class of three guys.
A really good class. Yeah.
A very good class. I mean, Jackson Arnold talked about how excited he was with Jaquaize Petaway, and Petaway, from what we've seen and watched some of his tape, is electric with the ball in his hands. I want to go back to the defensive line. It's like all my questions are defensive line, because it's just this class could end up being really good. Edric Hill seemed to be a guy that OU's kind of slow rolled a little bit. It seems like OU's starting out to make a really good, and the presence is getting really big in Kansas City now, with Caden Green and Adebawore announcing their commitments earlier this month. Edric Hill obviously got his offer from Oklahoma not too long ago. Where do you see that going? Because I think he's interested in Alabama and some other schools. Where does OU sit? I mean, does slow rolling him ultimately bite OU?
It could. It could. I mean, look, they waited maybe a little too long on this one. And look, people have to understand, like, they were in the middle of camps. Not a lot of offers were thrown out in the middle of the camp. Somewhere. But when Edric came in to visit, they had like a 3-day in a row double camps, like long camps. There wasn't a gap, like 3 or 4 days here, 4 or 5 days there. I mean, it just happened. And so they didn't get to do the staff meetings like they normally do and say, hey, what do you think about offering this guy, this guy, and get the head man's approval and the whole staff's approval on it. You know, you got to get that stamp. So when that happened, it kind of delayed it for a couple of weeks, and then people went on vacation. Finally, they all came back and then left again on vacation. But in the midst of that, they decided they were going to offer Kendrick Hill. And, you know, maybe it was too long. I don't know. I know Alabama, Nick Saban's been pushing really hard. If I had to pick, I'd pick Alabama right now. But this visit at the end of the month for Oklahoma, the fact that PJ Adebawore is a very close friend of his and is committed to OU, so is Caden Green. And when you have all of those dynamics plus, you know, a couple of coaches around him that are very pro-Oklahoma, that thing could really flip on its end for Oklahoma very quickly. He wants to make a decision in September. He could end up taking an official to Oklahoma really early, one of the first games, and then make an announcement shortly after that. But if I had to pick today, I'd pick if he was to make it. Let me phrase that. If he was to make a pick today, I would pick Alabama. If he is to make a pick in September, I'm going Oklahoma because I think Oklahoma can make up enough ground very quickly, especially with everybody chirping in his ear. He wanted that Oklahoma offer so bad that he camped there with Alabama, like begging him to come play for them. So, I mean, like that tells you how much he wanted to be in Norman with his buddies and at least have that, maybe not commit to Oklahoma, but have that opportunity to play with his friends if he chose to do so. And now he has that opportunity. What's he going to do with it? I think that's up to Oklahoma and how well they put on a show for him on the 29th.
So we've been talking a lot about the 23 class, and you know, it's completely fair. That's coming up, and it's going to round out here pretty soon. But I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on how 2024 is looking. I know their recruitment, there's still a lot before most of them will even make a verbal commitment, but there are some schools that are already getting some guys to commit. Do you see Oklahoma getting any commits anytime during this fall, or do you expect most of that to be, or, you know, second semester or springtime when those 2024 commits start rolling in for Oklahoma?
I maybe at the end of the month you could get one or two. I don't know. I mean, that's asking a lot. I'm trying to like find the list here. Somebody decided they wanted to unpin it off our board, which really makes it difficult for us. But yeah, I mean, look, I think Oklahoma is probably going to be a program that may not get a commit. I mean, it may get a commit or two during the during this month or during the 27th, where the 2024s and 25s are coming in for their visits. But at the same time, you know, it's tough with how Venables does things. You know, getting a 24 kid to commit and not take visits, that's going to be a tough pull, in my opinion. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm not saying it won't be done, but I mean, I finally found the list, by the way. When you're looking at players like, I'm trying to find the 24 guys, we have like KJ Bolden. He's going to take forever to make a decision. 5-star. It's going to be there. Devon Mitchell, one of the top 20-25 players in the country. He's tied in out of Allen, Texas. He's going to be there. 5-star DB. Charles Lester is going to be there out of Florida. Zadavian Sims, 4-star defensive lineman. Jaden Hardy, 4-star DB. I think, you know, Hardy could be one. You know what? If I was to pick one, and I was on the ref earlier today, and I said Zadavian Sims, who I think could be one of the first commits in the class. But I think if I was going to pick one, it'd be 4-star linebacker Peyton Pierce. I really think Oklahoma's in a really good spot there. Both of his family went to Oklahoma. He's got family still in Oklahoma. He goes to the lake in Oklahoma when he goes to his grandpa's lake house at Grand Lake. I mean, everything's surrounded with Oklahoma with him. So I think, you know, he could be one of the first commits to happen. And, that kind of fits the narrative of Venables being your head coach, getting a linebacker to be the first guy to pop in the 2024 class.
So I'm going to reel back to the 23 class, and I just got to ask it, even though I feel like it's not going to go our way on Saturday, but it's been hard to follow. This guy's been picked by an on-3 guy to go to Texas. He's been crystal ball to go to Michigan State. He's been all over the place. It's Peyton Kirkland. You seem pretty close with him. Is there any chance that he picks Oklahoma tomorrow? I guess if you had to put a percentage on it, what would you do?
25, 30% at most. I mean, I don't know. I honestly, he has started to play, he's telling everybody every different thing. So I don't really know what to believe anymore. That's where I'm at with this. I don't know what to believe anymore. And that's really hard to come by. I don't even know if Oklahoma's talking to him anymore. At one point I knew they weren't, but I stopped even really paying attention to it because it started going all over the place and people were just like, oh my gosh. So I think Michigan State could be a pick. I think Miami, I think Texas, I think Oklahoma. Those are your 4 choices, and he's gonna go to one of those 4. And if you're an Oklahoma fan and you're sitting there holding your breath, don't do it because you won't come out alive, I don't think. So I would not. Or even if you did, you're just risking it. I just think that it's too risky at this point with him. I don't think anybody knows what the heck he's going to do, and I think that's exactly what Peyton wanted done.
Yeah, I mean,
do you mind if I interject here real quick, bro?
No, go ahead.
How often does that happen with a recruit that they're saying so many different things that even someone that you might have had communications with them at one point yourself or a player where no one really knows what the heck's going on? Is that a common occurrence, or most people pretty straightforward and just saying let's keep it on the low until I'm closer to making a commitment?
I haven't seen this type very much. I mean, I've seen it, but not often. I mean, this type of stuff takes a rare kid to want to do this. I think the NIL is a big decision, and where Peyton's going to go. I think it's more his mom is more interested in the NIL than he is. That's why I think Michigan State, Texas would be and Miami would be more reliable than Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma has a good NIL deal, $5,000-$6,000 a month. Most people would take that plus your per diem. You're looking at close to 6 figures, right? But, when you're looking at a big, large number thrown at you instead of increments, there's quite the discrepancy. And that's why I would lean to those 3 over Oklahoma right now.
No, that's fair. I mean, that was the same thing that Parker basically said. It's like you're guessing. If you say one school, you're just guessing at that point. Another defensive lineman, and I think this will be the last one I ask about. This is last but not least, is David Hicks. Hicks, we've at least between the 3 of us, we've tried to temper our expectations because, I mean, at the end of the day, he is, the number 1 defensive lineman and everything else. But it seems like Oklahoma is still really in this. Are they getting some visits here pretty soon, or is he coming up the end of July, I guess, for the party in the Palace? I would assume that OU's getting an official this fall. Where does OU sit? I know it seems like OU and A&M here, and my gut tells me that A&M is going to be tough to beat, but I don't know.
A&M will be tough to beat, but if there's a lot of people that feel Oklahoma leads, and that's just not just homer talk. That's coming from multiple people. I even talked to an A&M person not too long ago that was like, it just seems like it's going a different way with him because he's just not talking up A&M like he once used to, and he talks up Oklahoma and Oregon, a lot. And so there's a lot of people that believe Oklahoma and Oregon have made just a massive push there for David Hicks, and he's going to be at OU at the end of the month. Very unsure if he's going to be at A&M right now. Now, I'm going to bet he makes it, but it's one of those things where you don't know. You know definitively he's going to be in Norman because that's what his dad said. His mom and him are going up on that visit. Mom wants to see Oklahoma again, wants to be around Coach Bates. And everybody will tell you, who does he have the best relationship with? Coach Bates, Coach Bates, Coach Bates, and Coach Venables. He's known them since they were in 8th grade, been pushing very hard for David Hicks. And so I like where Oklahoma stands. Obviously, you have to beat out A&M, you have to beat out Oregon, and you got to beat out a Texas team that's like trying to dig themselves back in this. And if Texas plays well to start the season, who knows how this recruitment could end up. So I think there's a lot of different variables in this that people really need to pay attention to.
So my last question here, and we've talked a lot about recruits, and whenever we've been doing our recruitment talk, we normally kind of go through, think about, all right, best case scenario, Oklahoma might be the number 3 class. Worst case scenario, it seems like top 10 at this point is inevitable for Oklahoma. Where do you when it's all said and done, what is your educated guess here where Oklahoma may end up in the rankings?
There's a scenario that they end up number 1. And that scenario would be you land LeBlanc, you land Wagner, you land Vickers, you land Evans, you land Hicks, you land Reid, you land, trying to think, you flip Bowen, you flip Yates, and trying to think of some, you get Jacoby Johnson on board. And that's 9 more commits. They're already at 16, so that would put them at 25. They would land 27 commits total if that happened. That you have to get Kendrick Hill in this as well. So if you were able to land those guys and get 27 commits in this, you're number 1 probably. It would be really hard to beat that class, honestly. I mean, really hard to beat, especially with Adebawore probably looking to be a 5-star when this is all said and done. And when you're looking at Arnold's probably going to continue to move up the rankings during the season. Petaway will probably make another move up into, fringe, high 4-star, 5-star range. Even Caden Green has a chance to make another big surge. So when you start looking at all those little things and you get Jacoby Johnson, who has a chance to really shoot up the rankings as well with another season. He's only got 1 year under his belt as far as film goes, and he's already, I think, like 120 or 115 or something like that. And you got also Omosigo as well, where he's, continues to move up. There is a chance that Oklahoma ends up number 1. Now, that's a far-fetched chance. There's no way I don't think Oklahoma goes 100% on all those guys. But even if they go 70%, you're still looking between 3 and 10. And anytime you can get a class like that and you can add some transfers to that, top-level transfers, you're looking at competing for a national championship quicker than you thought. And you're looking at showing everybody that Venables might just be the right man for the job when everybody was questioning his recruiting to start with. So there's that, just like you said, 3 to 10 is kind of where I kind of see it ending up right now. And if you can fall anywhere between there, if you're an OU fan, you're super happy with that recruiting class.
Definitely. Go ahead, Jose.
Sorry, I lied with my one more question. You reminded me when you were going through the rankings, naming or putting out the rankings of some of these players. We've had a listener that's asked us for a while now to explain how 24/7 and other recruiting platforms kind of get to that number, decide how one guy's a 3-star versus a 4-star versus a 5-star. Could you kind of give maybe just a simple explanation? How do these guys get ranked and how that process entirely works?
Okay, well, 5-star is we project them being a first-round pick. We're first-round talent, potentially. We think their upside is first-round talent. 4-star, anywhere between 50 or anywhere between, 35 and like 75 is second, third round talent. Anywhere after that is 4th, 5th round. And then you get the 3-stars are contributors that have an upside that could be anywhere between, 2nd to 7th round talent at some point. That's kind of a simplistic way of putting it.
That makes sense. So this is not related to any recruits right now, but you obviously have been around Oklahoma as a program for a long time in the football and, football and basketball. But, obviously I don't want to be talking about Lincoln Riley or anything, really talking about him, but what have you seen? Like, what changes have you seen from who you've talked to, the overall feel of the program? I mean, I feel like from what I've read, what we get from the outside looking in, it looks night and day different. It looks like more of a family. It looks more like they're all, together. It seems like there's more investments going into the program. What are some of the key differences that you've been seeing and hearing between the transition from Riley to now Venables and his staff?
I would say that Oklahoma's they're just more, you can't say more family oriented. I would say more, differences. I mean, the Soul Mission is big, and it's helped out with several recruits. I think the families look at that and they love that. I also think that the defensive background with Venables has helped out tremendously, and just the connections that some of these staffers have in the Southeast has really played a big role in Oklahoma's recruitment. And I think that's generally the difference. I mean, you got Levy, who's considered one of the top offensive minds in all of college football. You have Venables, who's considered the defensive mind in college football, not named Nick Saban or Kirby Smart. So, I mean, you add those two things together and it makes for a really good combination. The combination Oklahoma hasn't had. I mean, Grinch was a good coach, but he's not Venables on defense. I mean, everybody knows that.
So, Brum, you bringing up Old Muleshoe actually triggered a question that I meant to ask earlier. I couldn't remember it, but with Malachi Coleman, it seems to be down between OU, Nebraska, USC. Is that one as easy as whoever wins OU, Nebraska in the fall gets Malachi's commitment?
Oh, no, it's not that simple. I mean, USC's in it. I think Oklahoma's making a really good push, and I think Oklahoma's in a good spot for him. A better spot than I ever thought they would be in, especially how the whole thing started. It kind of seemed slow. The visit went really well for him, but a lot of people didn't think Oklahoma made that big of a punch. And then Joe John Finley has just stayed at it. And now Oklahoma's probably going to get an official visit out of him, and where it goes from there, we'll see. Oklahoma has a shot.
Yeah. I have one last question, or anyone else. Is there any name that we didn't talk about during this whole deal of who we've asked about that OU's in a really good spot for, that might surprise some people, that is kind of coming out of left field? OU's making a big surge, or did we kind of cover it? I'm just curious if there's anyone.
You guys covered it all. I mean, you guys asked about every recruit possible, I think, that's left on the board.
I figured we covered it all, but I just wanted to see if we dropped the ball anywhere.
Oh, well, you know what? Caden McDonald. You didn't ask about Caden McDonald. So
you even brought him up in our little pre-interview, Brum.
I did. I totally forgot to ask about McDonald, so I'll ask about McDonald now. I feel like,
he's going to take an official visit, and I don't know where that goes from now. I think Florida's the leader right now. I really do.
All right.
All right. There we go. Well, thank you, Brandon, again for joining us. To wrap up the video, our co-host here, Brandon, does an end of video challenge. So you want to go ahead and finish it up with that, bud?
Yeah, with the same thing that we did with Parker, and anytime we have a recruiting insider in here, I want to hear our viewers' thoughts on where the OU class finishes. Just that easy. Drop your prediction.
All right. Awesome. Make sure to do that. If you've made it this far, thank you so much. We appreciate it as always. Make sure you're hitting the like button, hit subscribe, follow us on social media. Everything is linked down below. If you want to search, it's at 2planesports. Thank you guys all again for watching. Thank you, Brandon, for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.